At the age of 10, I helped my mom leave the cold home. Dad chased me out. I clung to his leg, watching the cart carrying Mom fade away. I let out a big laugh. I waited a long time. New wounds on my body covered the old ones. By the age of 16, I still hadn't waited for my mom, I thought, as long as Mom was happy. Later, I went into a hardware store, bought a meter of thick hemp rope, wanting to end this short life. Emily, the shopkeeper, saw the many wounds on my body. Couldn't help but cry. Her son Michael tied a red rope around my wrist, saying, "May it protect you, may you be safe." The red string didn't protect me, but Michael kept watching over me. For a long, long time, when I was little, my teacher asked us to draw a picture of my mom. The mom in my drawing was colorful. Sometimes she was cyan, sometimes purple. She was very beautiful in my eyes. Ever since I can remember, Mom's face was always green and purple. I've never seen her face a normal color. I've seen my dad push my mom to the ground, blaming her for bringing misfortune. Said she should have found a woman with a better body. She'd be better able to bear children. I don't understand why. At night, I touched my mom's cold body. She was very thin, all bones, and her hips were small, not plump. I said, "Mom, I want you to eat more, so that your hips will become rounder." Mom smiled and touched my head. There was a hint of bitterness in the smile. She has a beautiful book, hidden in the core of my pillow. I couldn't read that book, but Mom often wept silently into my pillow. I always gently wiped away her tears with my little hand. That's when Mom would hug me tightly and cry. Dad was often not at home. Sometimes Mom would sit in the yard with me in her arms, telling me all kinds of stories. Women have full of loyalty and courage, not inferior to men in any way. She can dress up in front of the mirror, or she can put on cold armor and fight bravely. "Sophia, Mommy wants you to live the life you want." I snuggled into my mom's arms. I feel sleepy in my sleep. I heard my mom talking on the phone. "Mom, when are you guys coming to pick me up?" The voice on the other end of the phone sounded a little muffled. Suddenly, a man's voice came on the other end of the line. "Married women. Which one hasn't been beaten?" After that, the phone hung up. The phone hung up. Mom looks very anxious. Tears kept flowing. I felt dizzy. I reached out and hugged her and said, "Mom, don't cry. Sophia misses you." Mom leaned her head against my forehead. Warm tears dripped onto my forehead and flowed into my eyes again. She said, "Sophia, what would Mommy live for if she didn't have you? Without you, there would be no point in living." I had a good time with my mom, but I felt that she had something on her mind. I noticed she sent a text message. The reply was simple: "Day after tomorrow, 2 o'clock in the evening. There is a car waiting at the intersection." A smile finally appeared on Mom's face. I also felt a sense of relief in my heart, even secretly wishing Dad wouldn't come back. But the day after tomorrow arrived. Dad still came back. He was driving because of fatigue. On the highway, he crashed and killed a few sheep of the herdsmen. Not only did he not make any money on this trip, also have to lose a large amount. Looking at Dad's gloomy face, Mom hurriedly pushed me into the room. She panicked and pulled out 2 balls of cotton from her pocket and shoved them into my hand. I leaned against the door, listening to Dad ranting loudly. "You're just a piece of bad luck, all because you didn't give me a son. You're useless. All you do is cry. You keep crying every day. You've ruined all the good fortune of the Johnson family." I saw my mom on the floor through the door. Her head was still bleeding. She found me, covered her eyes with her hand, then closed her eyes. Just as Dad's fist was about to hit Mom's face, I violently pushed the door open, pushed Dad away with all my might. Dad's body didn't move. I grabbed his hand, bit hard on his tiger's mouth. Dad screamed in pain. With a wave of his hand, he threw me to the ground. "You ungrateful child. I can't believe you bit me." Dad huffed and puffed towards me. I sat on the ground, hiding straight back in fear, holding my head with both hands. Mom rushed in front of me. She hugged me tightly. "If you want to hit me, hit me. The child is still young. She doesn't understand anything." Dad's fist smashed down. Mom's tears, and my tears and snot, all mixed together, blurring my vision. "Help, don't hit my mom," I cried, hands on my mom's back. Fists slammed into my hands. I saw my dad's fierce eyes, like hungry wolves. "Don't make a sound, don't make a scene." I looked around anxiously. The houses with lights on, one after another. The lights gradually went out. No God of heaven came to save me and Mom. Dad got tired of fighting. He left us to go to our room. We lay in the yard. Mom was breathing heavily. The night was getting deeper and deeper. Even though it was summer, it was still cold at night. Dad's snoring comes from the house. Mom carefully stood up, struggling to pick me up, gently running outside. We ran out of the alley. I watched the fading lights in the yard, relieved. Suddenly, a dog barked and broke the silence. "Johnson, Johnson, your daughter-in-law ran away." I was lying in my mom's arms. I heard a lot of people approaching at a fast pace behind me. I could feel my mom's pace getting faster and faster. Suddenly, her feet slipped. She fell to the ground. I fell from Mom's arms to the ground, not caring about the pain on my body. Rushed to pick up Mom, continue to run forward. There was a faint light in front of me. I was panting badly, but Mom ran faster. I fell behind. Mom pulls hard on my hand. The footsteps behind me grew more urgent. Almost there, soon, we were getting closer to the light. Suddenly, my scalp tightened. A sharp pain came from my head. I turned around, found Dad grabbing my hair. Mom also turned her head, seeing Dad's scary eyes. She looked very scared. I felt her hands shaking as she held me. I froze for a moment. The mind went blank. Dad stepped forward quickly, trying to pull Mom back. At that moment, not far away came the sound of a car's horn. I came back to my senses at once. I made a strong effort to break away from Mom's hand, clung to Dad's legs, sitting on my butt on the ground. Dad was pulled violently by me, fell to the ground. I shouted, "Mom, run, don't look back." In a blur of tears, I saw my mom look back at me. Then she ran on with determination. "Sophia, Sophia, you wait for Mommy. You're such a child. You don't know what you're doing. I should never have given birth to you in the first place." Dad kept scolding me. He punched me on my arms and stomach. I watched my mom step towards the car, pulled open the door. The car drove off quickly. I wanted to laugh, but tears flowed first. A few people helped Dad up. I couldn't hold on any longer. I fainted in the darkness. I saw Mom smiling and waving at me. Her face was unscarred. She had a big smile. "Sophia, wait for Mommy. Mommy will definitely come to get you." I waved at my mom. I smile happily. "Mom, if my leaving can make you happy, then I'm willing too." After Mom left, Dad seldom went to work. He started drinking a lot. Sometimes he would confuse me with Mom. He'd drag me out into the yard, beat me with a belt. He'd call me names. "You unlucky bastard. You're too young to learn. You're a loser." I held back my tears. I didn't dare make a sound. The neighbors were surprisingly quiet. It was as if everything had frozen. The only sound in the air was the swinging of a belt. I held my head tightly, staring blearily at the faintest hint of light outside the door. But I knew in my heart, no one would come to help me. After being beaten, I hid in my room, hugging my mom's pillow tightly, smelling her odor. Sometimes I would sit on the doorstep, expecting Mom to come back with a smile on her face. But more often, I dreaded seeing her face all bruised and purple. I thought, maybe it's better if Mom doesn't come back. I turned missing my mom into motivation to study hard. At the age of 16, I got into the best high school. The school even waived my tuition. I often wore old clothes. Many clothes were washed and faded. At school, people didn't like me much. The class teacher is a young MTKS Emily. She is a new teacher. At the medical checkup, the doctors found the injuries on my body. MTKS Emily reported the situation to the school, then called me to the office, told me it wasn't a small matter, but she was willing to help me. I didn't say anything, just held her hand. MTKS Emily didn't call the police. She just used to bring me medicine and often sent me home. Dad always beat me when no one was looking. It saved me from having to wear long sleeves to cover up my arm injuries on hot days. One day, MTKS Emily found me in the hallway. She said, "Sophia, you should try out for an English competition." I looked at the golden poster in her hand. It said National Talent Cup English Contest. The words were stamped in gold. "The competition is in New York." I lowered my head, looked at my toes. There were patches on the shoes. I sewed them just like my mom did. Dad loved to drink, wouldn't give me extra money. I often helped out at the neighborhood food court, earned a little money of $1 or $2. I got carried away, knowing in my heart that Dad wouldn't approve of my participation. I shook my head, give her a curt smile. After school, I went to the food court as usual. The uncles and aunts there were very nice. They stuffed me with a hand full of radishes and cabbages. Evening, Dad came home drunk. I had to cook for him. I set the meal out skillfully in the yard, then sat in my room and read. Not long after, stumbling footsteps came from the yard. I knew, Dad is back. Dad was sitting in the yard. The empty bottle in his hand fell to the ground and broke. At that moment, MTKS Emily came. She stepped on the empty bottle in the doorway. She almost slipped. "You must be Sophia's father." "I'm Sophia's homeroom teacher," she says. "Recently, the city is organizing an English competition." Sophia, the child, Emily, the teacher, hadn't finished. Dad picked up the plate and smashed it at her feet. "It's you again. How is she qualified to participate in any competition? Hurry up and go." Teacher Emily didn't have time to dodge. The dish soup spilled onto her shoes. Sophia's dad: "This is a good opportunity. Sophia, later, you woman. Why can't you understand what you're saying? This child will have no future. Get married as soon as she graduates from high school. You can still get some money back. Those guys who break up other people's families, the school is really not looking at them." Dad stood up. A group of people gathered at the door. Someone said, "Yeah, what kind of teacher is this? This girl is encouraging her mom to leave. She's not a good person. The little girl is still in the competition." Mr. Emily is standing in the yard. She had a hesitant expression on her face. It seemed like he wanted to say something but didn't know how to speak. He muttered in a low voice, "This shouldn't be a money scam." I pulled her and ran out of the yard. Mtks Emily looked at me. The expression was both chagrined and helpless, eyes full of anger. I shook my head at her, still with a pleasing smile on my face. Back at the house, the yard was a mess. Dad broke a plate. Vegetable soup spilled all over the floor. I squatted down to organize things. I found that the poster brought by Mtks Emily had fallen to the ground at some point. It was soaked in the vegetable soup. I stared at the golden poster. Tears slid across my cheeks, dropping on it, splashing tiny splashes. Unexpected. This thing wasn't over yet. Sitting in the classroom, I heard someone yelling outside, "Is this school of yours cheating money? What competition? I think it's just a scam." "Emily, Emily, come out. You're heartless." What's wrong with me hitting my daughter? Call the police. My right eye keeps jumping. The voice is getting closer and closer. I avoided the eyes of my classmates. I rushed out of the classroom without hesitation. I had only one thought in my mind. Mtks Emily. I want to protect her. In the corridor, I saw my dad holding onto Mtks Emily's arm, yelling angrily at her. Spittle almost splattered on her face. I couldn't help but yell, "You are not a human being. You don't deserve to be a father." Mtks Emily stared at Dad. Dad was very angry. Raising his hand, he tried to hit Mtks Emily's face. I rushed up. There was a slap. The slap hit my face hard. I was knocked back a few steps. My face was instantly unconscious. Mtks Emily grabbed Dad's arm and twisted it. Several male teachers rushed over to pull Dad away. Mtks Emily said, "This kid encouraged his mom to go with someone else. This kind of person still deserved to go to school. Emily, you do this. You're trying to send her to a place like that. You're all bad." Dad was still resisting. A couple of guards dragged him out. It was rough. My face is still unconscious. The mind is a mess. People around me looked at me curiously. Mr. Emily's eyes were red with anger. I felt like I was stabbed by countless invisible knives. The pain was unbearable, but couldn't make a sound. I understood. The last remaining thing I had was lost at this moment. I apologized profusely to Mtks Emily. "Mtks Emily, I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry." I bowed to Emily Sensei, apologizing to her without stopping. And then I ran out of the school like I was running for my life. I walked aimlessly, not knowing where to go. The world is so big, but I couldn't find a place where I belonged. The sun was about to set. I dragged my tired body into a big hardware store. There were very few people in the store. Only Emily, the store owner, smiled warmly at me. I walked in a little nervously. "Emily, Emily, I want a meter of thick twine." Emily in the store enthusiastically took out a ruler and started to measure the length of the rope. I watched as she prepared to cut the rope. I put my hand into my pants pocket. I fumbled around and pulled out some loose bills. "Emily, all this money is yours." Emily froze. Her eyes slowly welled up with tears. "How old are you? How old are you?" I couldn't look her in the eye. Hands clenched, lowered my head. "Do you have a home? Your mom and dad will be worried about you." Her voice trembled a little. My eyes were moist too. I buried my head deeper. "My mom left. My dad beat me a lot. I don't have a home anymore." Emily hugged me tightly, leaning my head against her. I felt warm liquid dripping down my neck, slowly sliding down. The liquid was as hot as lava. It scalded my eyes and brought tears to my eyes. I shivered in pain. Emily gently turned my body, saw the swelling on my face. She didn't say anything, just used safflower oil to help me apply the big and small wounds on my body. Some parts of my body were already bruised. It was like a canvas. I sat on the couch in the hardware store. Emily was busy running around. I heard her calling Michael. I felt uneasy, fingernails pinched tightly on my palms. After a while, a tall man appeared in front of the store, holding a thermos and a bag of small fish. I looked up. He was wearing an apron. His skin was a healthy bronze color. The man's name was Michael, was Emily's son. Michael waved at me and said, "Little girl, have some fish soup." I kept my head down and didn't know what to do. Emily sat next to me, gently wrapped her arm around my shoulders. The thermos was turned on. The milky white soup was filled with golden fish meat. It was steaming hot. The aroma of fish and green onion mixed together. It went straight to my nose. I took the spoon Emily handed me, taking small sips of the soup. My nose was a little sore at that moment. Michael came into the kitchen, picked up a knife and started handling the small fish. I heard the crackling in the frying pan. I couldn't help but gulp. Michael soon came out with a plate of freshly fried fish. The small fish was golden and crispy, neatly arranged on a white plate. Tiny splashes of oil were still bubbling on the skin of the fish. Zai zai sound. My stomach began to rumble. "Sophia, you try it. He makes these extra tasty." I picked up a small fish and put it in my mouth. I wiped my hands with paper, then cupped my ears and inhaled. Michael smiled at me. I smiled back awkwardly. Emily noticed the atmosphere easing up, then kept chanting, "That life is precious. People who commit suicide can't be reincarnated in their next life." I was amused. She was treating me like a child. Michael sat on the other side. He didn't say anything, just looked at the wound on my face, frowned. It was dark. I was ready to go home. Michael followed me all the way. He was silent. There were few pedestrians on the road. The streetlight stretched my shadow. His shadow overlapped with mine, moving gently with his footsteps, like a silent guardian, silently accompanying me. I deliberately slowed down my pace. Michael asked me, "Little sister, is your leg hurt too?" I felt a little embarrassed. Michael didn't say anything. He just squatted down and let me lie on his back. I grabbed his shoulders. I could feel that he was breathing heavily, so I asked, "Am I too heavy?" "No, you're very light. I hardly have to exert myself. The little house I remember is right in front of me." "Michael, I'm here, thank you." Michael set me down gently. I looked at his face with reluctance. I silently thanked them for the warmth they brought me. I walked into the small yard, seeing Dad sitting in front of the door. A few bottles of wine were scattered beside him. He said, "Just like your mom, you're no good. Coming back so late, you've gone to see someone else." I stared at him. It's as if what happened at school was right in front of my eyes. But he acts like nothing happened. "Dad, you ruined everything." Dad suddenly acted like he was enraged. He grabbed the bottle beside him and smashed it at me. I didn't dodge. After the door to the small courtyard closed, I realized I shouldn't expect any warmth. The bottle hit me on the head. I touched it. My hands were sticky. "I have nothing left. You beat me to death." I shouted out emotionally. Dad cursed angrily, then stood up and walked towards me. I closed my eyes, thought he would hit me, but the expected punches and kicks didn't land on me. I heard the door to the yard slam open. A light shone in. Michael took the flashlight, turned the light as bright as it would go, shining straight into Dad's face in that moment. He was like a god coming down from heaven. I prayed countless times that someone would stop Dad's violent behavior, but reality made me realize God didn't exist until Michael pushed open the door and walked in. It was as if he was glowing. "Who are you? How did you get into the house?" Michael threw the flashlight at Dad. "Michael, how can you talk like that? She's your daughter, not your enemy. You leave me alone. This is my child." Michael swung his fist at his father's face angrily. "You're being abusive. I'm going to call the police. You're going to jail." The father's eyes were wide, legs trembling helplessly. Michael grabbed my hand and said, "You've gone too far. I'll take her to the police station right now to report the case. If you fool around again, I'll make sure you go to jail." I froze as he pulled me outside. There was only the sound of wind and insects in my ears. "Michael, didn't you leave?" Michael didn't answer directly. He just shook his head and said, "It's a secret. Is that why you always get hurt?" I shook my head too, smiled mysteriously. "Secret." My palms sweat slightly in Michael's hands. He suddenly let go of my hand. I was looking at him suspiciously. He took out a red string, tied it around my wrist. His eyes were particularly bright. He said, "May it protect you. May you be safe." Michael accompanied me to the hospital for an injury evaluation. When I came out from the police station, filing with gauze wrapped around my head, I saw Emily waiting anxiously outside the door. I was touched in my heart, nose a little sour. "It's good to be back. It's good to be back. Emily's store is big. You can stay there. Michael stood next to me. The two of them are holding me in the middle like a chicken. The wind is blowing gently today. It feels cozy. Emily helped me clean up my room. It's on the second floor of the hardware store. Both Emily's and my rooms are on this floor. I lay under the soft quilt, grasping the red cord I wore on my wrist, body shaking nonstop. Couldn't tell if I was crying or laughing. The next day, I woke up early, started making omelets in the kitchen. Emily rubbed her eyes that were not fully open, surprised. Sophia, what are you doing here? Michael comes out of his room, walks next to me, coughs on purpose. Cough, this is my seat. I hadn't reacted to what Michael was saying. He already naturally took the small spatula in my hand, started flipping the omelet in the pan. Emily chuckled. Don't you argue with him. That's what he loves to do. Let's go take a break. I follow Emily downstairs. I go downstairs with Emily and organize the hardware store before Emily does. Emily smiles. Sophia, I'm not here to see Lammer. She pulls me into a chair, takes a comb and starts braiding my hair. I was too nervous to move. Sit up straight. She laughs. Ha ha ha. Am I dressing up a scarecrow? I looked at my hair that was as messy as a weed. I couldn't help but laugh. Emily's hands are so handy. She tied the hair on the top of my head into 2 strands of pigtails. The rest of my hair was parted into a double ponytail. My face is round. It was especially pleasing to the eye. Emily gently pinched my face. I felt tickled. Couldn't help but smile. She said, Sophia is so cute when she smiles. Michael came downstairs with the omelet and soy milk. The omelet on the plate is round, like the newly risen sun. The golden crust shines tantalizingly. The edges are slightly raised, with a little charred. The center is sprinkled with a circle of green onion and sesame seeds. It looked especially delicious. I felt like I couldn't help but gulp. Michael smiled and looked at me. Pass the cake to me. Brother, are you a chef? I took a bite of the quiche. The outer crust is crispy. The egg inside is smooth and tender. The aroma is delicious. This is also a secret. You'll understand when you come with me later to check it out. Michael smiled wryly. Emily knocked him lightly on the head. I saw his embarrassed expression. Couldn't help but laugh after breakfast. Michael and I went out together. The sound of hawking came from the distance. I followed Michael into a big food market. Michael walked into a store selling fish, skillfully tied on a black apron. He chose a plump fish from the pond. He slammed it on the ground. The fish grew immobile in its struggle. Then, he quickly removed the gills, cut open the belly of the fish, the whole time without blinking. Wow, you're a real chef. I give him a thumbs up. Michael looks at me. Couldn't help but laugh out loud. I pretended not to notice his smile, concentrate on watching him handle the fish. Michael cuts the fish into small, uniformly sized pieces while drying the fish. He nudged towards me. I understood what he meant, grabbed a nearby pot and set it on the stove, poured some hot oil into it. Michael sprinkled some salt into the pan. The fish sauteed in the pan. He put in the onion, ginger, garlic, and seasonings. Then he added some hot water to the pan. Oops, Michael is cooking the fish again. We're in for a treat. Yes, we are. Since Michael came, I've gained a lot of weight. It's because you always eat so much. The stallholders have all arrived. They're chatting enthusiastically. Someone asked, where is this little girl? Is your relative? I heard them mention me. I looked up. Michael looked at me. He said, this is my sister. The person next to me immediately picked up. Aya, the little girl is so pretty. She looks so much like you. Michael stopped, winked at me, smiling. She's not my real sister. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. I looked at Michael's slightly raised eyebrows, laughing openly along with him. The fish is gurgling in the pot. Michael lifted the lid. The aroma immediately wafted out. People kept gulping. They came over to ask the price of the fish. Grass carp is $13. Perch $18 in the pot is 3 scales. A catty $8. I used a disposable cup to cut the fish into small pieces, tasting it for those who came to inquire. Michael's business is especially good. Some aunts even asked what secret seasoning he used. Michael patiently explains to them how to cook various kinds of fish. I was mesmerized. Michael's fish sold very fast, when there were only some less active fish left. I helped him to sell them. More money to buy, more money to sell. I don't want to make money. I just want to have a good time. Michael looked at me. A big smile appeared on his face. The auntie selling vegetables next to me was curious and asked me to help her figure out how to yell. I divided her vegetables into small bundles, then shouted, carrots, small onions, green vegetables sold cheaply. $1 a bundle, $1 for the whole place when Michael killed the fish. I went to the next stall to chat. Emily's electronic scale was broken. I brought it over and tapped it. The battery jammed. I tapped it back into place. David's cell phone had no sound. I helped him press the volume button to turn up the sound. Linda, who sells vegetables at a stall, doesn't know how to use a cell phone. I asked Michael to change cash for her. It was quick. Everyone in the market thought I was a hacker. Can do anything. Michael told Emily about it. Emily sat on the sofa and laughed her head off. Emily braided my hair every day, and Michael takes care of my 3 meals a day. It's just like she said. Her big store could feed tiny me. My face grew some flesh, smiled with shallow dimples. My room was decorated with flowers that Emily had arranged for me. The doll Michael bought for me was on my bed. I like Emily very much. I also like Michael. I helped Michael as usual, but my right eye suddenly jumped very badly. I sat down on a chair and rubbed my eye. Oh, good. You're really out looking for someone else, just like your mom. Michael reacted quickly, immediately called the police. He tumbled out of the cubicle, grabbed Dad's collar, slapped him hard. What I told you last time? Have you forgotten? Why are you still doing this kind of thing? Dad had to look up at Michael. There was fear in his eyes. I walked out too as soon as Dad saw me. He became more agitated. You kid, you don't come home. You're just like your mom. I picked up a fish that Michael had just processed. Hit Johnson hard in the face. You're the bad guy. No cursing my mom. The fish is still twisting in my hand. I threw it at Johnson's face as hard as I could. You're the one who bullied me. You're the one who bullied us. Johnson's face was covered in blood. Michael rinses him off with water. Johnson falls limp on the floor, moaning in pain. The siren sounds. 2 policemen get out of the police car. Someone shouts, "Comrade policeman, quickly save me. This guy is going to beat me." The policeman looked at me, just wanted to open his mouth to ask questions. At this time Emily came out. She said, "Oops, what the hell, who hit him? Comrade policeman, I'm so old. There's no need to lie, I've been sitting here. He came over here and cried on the floor. Is he trying to cheat me out of money? I'm a bit scared." Linda stood up on her haunches. "Yeah, right? Nobody hit him." Johnson is still complaining angrily. "That old lady, she actually hit me in the face. Didn't you all see that? It's really too much." Linda covers her chest. Her face turned white, said to the police, "I don't have a good heart. Now my chest hurts. I'm a bit scared." The 2 policemen looked at each other. Everyone there said no one hit him. My dad was the only one who didn't say anything. Michael stepped forward and said, "Comrade policeman, we've reported this before. Today this comrade came over to continue to put his hands on Sophia. The police took me, Michael, and Johnson away. Michael showed the police the report and my injury report. Things were clear. The police department decided to detain Johnson. The time was about 3 to 5 days. I excitedly dragged Michael to the cotton candy stand on the side of the road. "Michael, I'm so happy. I'll buy you some candy." Michael took the marshmallow in the shape of a piglet and looked at me. He looked at me. There was a gentle smile in his eyes. He pointed to the red string on my wrist and said, "I said, it will protect you." Michael's smile stayed on his face. I looked at his bright eyes. My heart couldn't help but slow down. I took Michael's hand. His hand was warm, back to the food market. "Linda looks good." There was nothing wrong. I heard Emily say Linda was performing well. Thought she was really in some kind of trouble. My heart was also solid. Emily said today is a good day. She suggested that we make dumplings together. It symbolizes reunion. She decided to make both black sesame and peanut fillings. A tutorial for making fresh meat soup dumplings was being displayed on my cell phone screen. Michael brought a pot of glutinous rice flour. Heat the water first, then add cold water. Then use your hands to knead in the powder when the glutinous rice flour is kneaded like dough. Emily asked us to wrap the filling together. "Sophia, you go first." I pinched a small piece of glutinous rice dough. I flattened it, then put a lot of black sesame seeds inside. Michael quietly took out a small bowl of seasoned meat filling, said to her, "I see you want to eat it. This one is for you." He scratched his face with his hand. He didn't notice the sticky rice powder on his hand. I pulled Emily, looked at him and smiled. "Let's start eating the dumplings." I hid a coin in one of the dumplings. Emily winked at us, smiling. "Let's see who gets to eat it. The meat-filled dumplings are quite special. Take a bite. Juicy and rich." Emily added a few more dumplings to my bowl. There was a crunch. I covered my mouth, expression twisted. Coins, I ate it. They both applauded me. I pretend not to notice them making eyes at each other. My eyes were moist. Life has hit me again and again. It's made me tougher, my dear. There's more to life than meets the eye. We came into this world to feel the warmth of the sun. Soft music is playing on my cell phone. I gradually fell asleep. After that, Johnson never showed up again. Michael's store is not doing well these days. His fish stew is fragrant, but the flavor wasn't good enough. Then the fish he sold became less and less fresh. He didn't seem to care much when I was cleaning the fish. I saw something flashing in the fish's belly. I took it out and took a look. It was a small tablet. It had instructions on it. I looked at it. It said fish vine. I handed the pill to Michael. Michael immediately said, "Fish vine." He noticed the confused look on my face, explained, "It's an insecticide. Some people use it to poison fish." I covered my mouth, not daring to make a sound. Michael put all the fish back into the pond. He installed a pinhole camera on the shed roof of the store. At night, Michael and I hid under the counter of the food vendor next door. Emily blocked it with something. It was hard to spot us from outside. The two of us stayed close together, staring at the movements of the fish store through the cracks. Around 2 or 3 in the morning, I heard sneaky footsteps outside. Michael and I were immediately alert. Saw 2 young men walk over to the fish pond, pouring something into it. I tried my best to keep my eyes open, but still couldn't see clearly. Hey, Johnson was right. This fish stall is doing so well. We'll do as he says. We'll be able to make a fortune. Ha ha ha. We're going to be rich. The 2 men turned around and left. When they got to the end of the alley, I heard a snap. After making sure they were far away, we continued to hide under the counter for an hour or 2. Just after dawn, Michael and I crawled out from the counter. Both of our legs were numb. I could barely stand up. Michael rushed to help me. My heart was in turmoil. I didn't know what to do. Johnson told me, "My dad is trying to turn Michael against me." I turned my head to Michael. He said calmly, "When we realized there was something wrong with the fish, we stopped selling them. The fish we've been selling lately have been bought from other vendors. They don't know about it. This has nothing to do with you." Michael stared at me. His eyes were so soft that they seemed to be able to drip water. My heart couldn't help but tighten. We walked to the end of the alley. I saw a large trash can. There was an empty green bottle lying on the trash, written on the bottle in large letters, "Fish Vinezone." I excitedly pulled Michael, put on disposable gloves, and picked up the bottle. We didn't go home. We went straight to the police station. Michael backed up the video on his cell phone. Then he gave the police a copy of the surveillance video. The surveillance video is very clear. The face of the poisoner was clearly visible. The police were the same ones as last time. After hearing Johnson's name, their expressions froze for a moment. "Is this your real father?" The police looked at me seriously. I smiled helplessly. I really hoped he wasn't. After getting the evidence, the police quickly launched an investigation. Those 2 punks were quickly brought to the police station. Under the police's questioning, they quickly confessed. Johnson sought our help, said his daughter was cheated by that man, asked us to teach that man a lesson. "We really didn't know it was poison. We didn't think it would kill anyone." Johnson, "How could you ask us to poison someone?" The evidence was overwhelming. The 2 young men were sentenced to 15 and 12 years each for poisoning. Johnson was sentenced to death. When the police went to arrest Johnson, they found that he had already been duly punished. Johnson loved to drink. He thought that Michael and I were about to get into trouble, and got so happy that he laughed. He bought a lot of cheap wine, celebrated at home, ended up drinking too much, alcohol poisoning in his imagination. He was still the master of the house, controlling the fate of my mom and me. He lit a fire in the house. The fire burned very quickly. Johnson mistook Mom's and my pillows for us, pressed hard into the fire to keep them from moving. By the time he came to his senses a little, the fire was too big. Johnson wasn't able to escape. He was eventually engulfed by the fire. The surrounding neighbors didn't escape the incident either. Johnson had been loudly scolding me and Mom in the yard. The neighbors thought he was just beating me. The result, no one came out to take a look. The fire spread quickly. The neighbors had some damage to their houses. Michael and I got the call at the food market after learning about Johnson's situation. The big stone in my heart finally fell to the ground. I felt immensely relieved. Tears had long since stopped flowing. Michael gently wiped away the tears on my face with his fingertips. Emily received Michael's message, gave me a call, said, "Sophia, Emily has a surprise for you." I hurried home with Michael. When we got to the second-floor living room, I spotted a familiar back. I walked up. With a voice that was a little shaky, I shouted, "Emtikes Emily." Emtikes Emily turned around with a smile on her face. After the police told me about Johnson's death, I returned to this once familiar home for the first time. The small yard had fallen into disrepair. There were traces of gray everywhere. The inside and outside of the house had been reduced to ashes by fire. I stood at the entrance of the yard. Michael and Emily stood on either side of me, holding my hands tightly. Gave me great courage. They led me through the alley, walked the part of the path that I hadn't been able to walk as a child. I turned to Michael. I fell here as a child. It hurt like hell. The words were not finished. A woman appeared at the end of the road. She opened her arms toward me. She shouted, "Sophia." I ran as hard as I could towards her. When I was 18, Mom came back. She didn't leave me in these good times. She shone brightly.